introduce you in a second, but ladies and gentlemen, we had the toughest time getting on the recording today because my dumbass doesn't know how to use technology. I'm like the worst Asian. But cheers and thank you very much for hopping on in.
Cheers, man.
Everybody, this is a good buddy of mine, Brandon Troy. I brought him on today because I just want to shoot the shit and talk about everything from why he's flying an X-Wing all the way to Andrew Tate and everything else in the middle. But yeah, dude, welcome and thank you so much for making the time, brother.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, yeah.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, the background. Like I was saying, this is the from the artist that he NFT all this stuff recently, and he did one of the NFTs that's in Joe Rogan's studio.
Uh-huh.
I downloaded a bunch of his stuff before he NFT'd it,
Oh,
so I don't know where this lands as far as maybe like copyright infringement or whatever, but you can't download this anywhere, and I still have it on like an encrypted cloud thing that I have called
mhm.
yeah. So yeah, so I still have it, still use it.
Yeah, I wouldn't even worry too much about it. I'm not even on their radar. And most of my
Yeah,
actual listeners is on Spotify without video anyway. So the only people that'll catch is
cool.
on YouTube. So actually, go ahead, YouTube, catch it. I need more viewers. So let's get some controversy going. It's funny,
Seriously.
man. Let's stay on the NFT really quick. How well versed are you on the world of NFTs?
Not really. I know that like I so as far as from an investment standpoint, like
Hmm.
not really, right? Like
Okay.
I don't keep up with the trends, but I guess because of like my natural instinct to want to know like a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
I do understand like the scalability. So like if we wanted to talk about NFTs and how it relates to Web3, I could
Mhm.
probably sound intelligent, but I wouldn't say that it's fact, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, like that, like basically NFTs would allow you to create something, right? And for it to, no matter how many times it's copied over or whatever, my understanding is that there is like on the blockchain, there's like some way for you to like be able to claim that it's yours, right? And
Right.
to collect on royalty or
Mhm.
whatever, right?
Right.
So the way that I understand it for like at least where a company like Roblox, right? Where every so often they'll have like a cross promotion with Tommy Hilfiger or like Polo Sport or Gucci or whatever, and they'll have kids go into that like world or log into that mini game of their platform, and
Hmm.
then they'll do like little challenges or whatever, and then their character can like collect like one-off hats and outfits and stuff. Like my son does that, and
Mm.
my understanding is that that's going to be a way for children, at least on that platform, are going to be able to figure out how to like conduct themselves in a new Web3 kind of like economy, I guess,
Yeah.
right? They're
Yeah.
going to understand that like, hey, I got this specific thing, and then there eventually could be a value in it because of demand and because it was like one off. So you're kind of like combining tech and Web3 with like hype beast stuff. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know. Like, it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. I don't know shit.
No,
So
no, no. It's gotta be better than what my dumbass layman in view of it is. I mean, when this whole NFT started making a big wave, probably pre-COVID, and then everyone had time during COVID, everyone started doing it. And then honestly, just with anything else, dude, scammers come out, everybody, their grandma has an NFT, and celebrities start signing on with stuff they don't even know about. People lost a bunch of money and stuff like that. But what
yeah,
you're talking about is you're talking about an actual paradigm shift in communities and how people live their life. And you're right, your son is going to be part of Web3 if not something else by the time he's a
yeah,
active consumer, active participant of society, right?
yeah.
So like for me, my understanding, especially in the early stages of NFT, it started off as basically writing it on the blockchain to certified art, right? To certify that, hey,
Correct.
you have a collectible, a digital collectible, this is you.
Yeah.
Because right now in my kitchen, I have a Picasso painting in my kitchen. Obviously, it's not an
Hmm.
original Picasso. So I think I bought it at Target for like 30 bucks, right? But a real
Yeah, yeah,
Picasso, a real certified Picasso will be in the millions. So same thing in the digital world. The NFT is going to allow people to have ownership of original digital art. You and I can have it on our phone, but we're not the true original owner. So they're
yeah.
on the hold the value. But I think where it eventually evolved, especially with the Bored Apes, is that just like art collectors, right? People
Hmm.
that buy art aren't necessarily collectors. What they do is
Sure.
they basically buy art so they can be part of a community. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
able to drop 30 million on an art piece for your house, you're not buying the
Yeah.
art piece. You're buying membership into an exclusive elite community. And I think
Yeah,
that,
I agree.
yeah, and that's what NFTs has evolved into, is that as people start buying NFTs, you're actually buying your way into a community. And these communities have now sprung into basically a a society of within themselves, where they're
Sure.
trading goods and services and stuff like that. I only know this because one of my real good mentors has started a huge NFT community in the real estate space, where
Oh
he's, you
wow.
know, oh yeah, where he's doling out NFTs, and they just minted last week. And, you know, NFT holders are now able to share business ideas with each other, participate in each other's real estate deals, participate in each other's Airbnb services, and all that stuff. So you really are buying into a community. So anyway, so it's just two guys that barely know what NFT means trying to explain NFTs to the world. So take it for what it's worth, everybody.
Yeah,
But
take it
anyway,
all
man.
with a
Other
grain
than
of
that, man,
salt.
how's life been? I follow you on social a lot. I love seeing your son train, kicking ass and stuff. Every UFC he's punching and kicking. What's that? What's
Yeah.
that going? How's that going?
It's been amazing, man. Like, so he's 7, he's gonna be 8 in October.
Mm,
He trains 5 days a week now, like self-directed. Like, we're not sports parents, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm not the most athletic person. I wasn't like a varsity sports head or whatever. And
yeah.
Tara did okay in high school sports, but we're not sports parents, you know what I mean? So we provided opportunities for our son to like explore, right? Things that he was interested in. And one of the very first things that he was interested in was like kung fu, and like, you know, hearing about like how my Chinese grandfather like was taught by the monks like during like, you know, the like early 1900s in mainland China and stuff like that, like chole fat and stuff like that.
Mm,
So when he was 2.5, 3 years old, like we bought him some kid boxing gloves and some focus pads, and we just taught him how to punch, and he
love
kind of
it.
just took it on from there. So he's been training since he was 3.5.
Oh,
Like
that's awesome.
he's or three, yeah, since he was 3. And he's been training at that gym. Like he got a special kind of like he got a little special like waiver, I guess, right? Because the coach normally didn't teach kids that young. You know, he's intelligent. I mean, I'm not saying that just because like it's my kid. It's like,
Yeah,
you know, he's apathetic. He understands the world around him and his place in the world, but not to like his detriment. Like he's not stressed out or like thinking he's less than, right? Like
right.
he knows his place. He's empathetic, cares about cares about community. But yeah, anyways, he's training, and then he's gonna try out for the fight team this coming few weeks. So yeah, yeah,
Super fun, dude. I mean, you may not know. I mean, I've been in martial arts all my life, right? So it's one of those things,
yeah,
dude. Like it really is a good core foundation for everybody. But I'm gonna sound sexist for a hot second and say, especially men, especially men.
no,
I had a conversation with my buddy Chester a couple weeks ago, and I said one of the things what I said is that the difference between men and women, or boys and girls, is a different type of energy and a different type of energy expenditure that has to happen, right? I
yep,
mean, got boys when they don't have an outlet for their massive amount of energy through their development, you know, kids, preteen, teenagers, all that stuff, they cause
yeah.
havoc. And that's so important. And again, martial arts is great for everybody, but especially an outlet for dudes, for young boys. You know, that discipline, the outlet is awesome, man. So yeah, every time I see videos of him kicking and punching, especially after a UFC fight, it makes me laugh, man. It makes me
Yeah,
it makes me
he wants
smile.
to
It's
try
cool.
out. He wants to try out like rear naked chokes on me and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I've seen him.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
him.
Right after Diaz did that, he was like, "Oh, yeah. How do you lock
Yeah.
that up?" No, I agree with you. Like one of the other things too, and I told him was like for our family, one of the things that I was brought up on was that all the men in our family need to know how to fight and like
Mm,
be able to protect themselves and protect the ones that they love, right? Whether
mm,
that's family, whether that's their friends, they need to be able to defend themselves and other people, right? But also at the same time too, though, like I on that same vein, like as much as it's important for him to be physical, like we also put a big we put a big emphasis on him like verbal communication, right?
mm,
Like if there's something wrong, like we don't just resort to straight up like making someone's nose bleed. Like he knows if someone touches him like in any way that's aggressive or like
right,
unwanted, that
right.
he's supposed to tell, like in a school setting, right? There's levels, right? So if he's in a school setting, then it's like he knows like, hey, stop, I need my space, like get off me, that type of stuff. Escalate it, tell a teacher. But if it becomes a problem, then I told him, I'm like, you punch them until they bleed, and then you punch them 3 more times after that. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And so fortunately, he's been able to like know when it was appropriate times to escalate, but he's never had to like resort to violence because he's been able to like verbalize. And that's
right.
another thing too, like that we really instill too, is like it's not just like training the physical, but he also has to train his mental too. You know what I mean? Like we put a big premium on the way that he like communicates his feelings or frustrations or sadness or fear or anything like that.
Mm,
So like it's kind of like a little bit of kind of like how I know you and I were raised, like just getting our asses beat, just
sure,
like, hey, suck it up, buttercup. But then
sure.
also at the same time, it's like I've never had to spank him. Like I
Mm,
spanked him once, like, and that's it. And like he gets it because we were able to talk through stuff. I mean, there's a story I could tell you right now where it's like most recently, like he had to like he felt like real ballsy. So he wanted to test like how daddy could fight. So I,
sure.
I called him out. I'm like, all right, dude, get your shit on. Let's go. And he was just like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that shit. But
He's like, shit,
yeah,
mom's
no,
not
but
here.
yeah, I know, but like, but then I just waited to see what he did. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I wasn't gonna go at all spar with my kid, but I
Yeah.
wanted to see what he would do. Like, no, like, okay, you wrote this check. Now, like, you gonna cash it or what? You're gonna come
Right.
up with this shit. So he started putting on his gear. He was crying and stuff, but like, he put on his gear because he was like, all right, like that's his morals. That's what we taught him. It was like, okay, you said you're gonna do this shit,
Mm-hmm.
so now you're gonna have to show and prove. So I waited, and he saw what he was gonna do, and I stopped him and I said, hey, look, has daddy ever spanked you? And he was like, no, maybe one time. I'm like, yeah, one time. And I was like, have you ever done that again? And he's like, no. I was like, well, what makes you think that daddy was really gonna box you, dude?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? But
Right.
there's an example. But I told him, I was like, there's a lesson to be learned here, right? Like, if you're gonna talk that tough guy shit, you got to be ready to like back it up. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So he's
Yep.
very like, yeah, I could go on and on and on about my kid. Obviously, I'm very proud of him and stuff. But I think if anybody, any of your listeners, and even you, Rick, like if you get a chance to see him, like this isn't like typical parent embellishment and stuff, right? Like if my kid was ugly, I would tell you straight up,
Oh no, I see
he's
him.
ugly.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd be like, if I was like, no, but I meant like, if he was ugly, I'd be like, yeah, he could be better looking, but he's a sweet kid. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah. Has a good
I'm real enough
personality.
with, and that's yeah, but he's got a great personality. But I mean, like really, I really mean it. Like he's empathetic beyond his years. Like you know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
truly is like a leader, like in like how he carries himself,
Yeah.
like very much beyond his years. So
Yeah. Without bias, I can say he's a super handsome kid, partly because, hey,
yeah,
let's be honest, he's a mixed kid. He's
yeah.
Asian and he's white. His mom's white. That's one thing Brandon and I have in common is we try to infiltrate the colonizers by marrying white women. You know what I mean? It's a joke, YouTube. It's a joke. It's a joke,
Joke, get
YouTube.
off of it. Hey,
Jesus.
dude,
But
you know what? She actually no, she perpetrated the colonization. She approached me, so
mm,
so
either way it worked out, bro. So it's all good.
yeah,
It's all good. But no, I think the lesson there is awesome, dude. And I think adults, because we're in a certain generation, like you and I, we're roughly about the same age. How old are you?
I'm 40.
Okay, I'm 46. I'm a little bit older, but yeah, we're in our 40s.
Yeah,
There are adults right now that are in their 20s, early 20s, that have never known a society before social media, right? And social
yeah,
media breeds a different society, bro. What's the
it
famous
does.
Mike Tyson saying? It's like social media has caused a society to do things and act in a way without consequences. In other words, you don't
Yeah.
get punched in the mouth anymore. We don't
Nope.
advocate for violence, but the bigger picture is what you taught your son and some of these adults that are missing is that words, actions have consequences. So you
Yep.
don't take them lightly. You don't go out there and
Yep.
throw a challenge at. You don't go out there and talk shit. You don't go out there and behave in a certain way and think, hey, life's gonna be gravy because there are consequences in life, and that's a beautiful thing. I think we need more of that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know.
related to the social media thing, like my wife and I until the pandemic, like we did not allow Shane to be on our phones when we went out to dinner with family or
Mm,
friends. He didn't have an iPad until remote learning was a requirement. And then we had to really like kind of catch up. So as parents, we're trying to do this balance. And I think it's
yeah.
related to what you're saying, right? Like
Yeah.
one of the tenets is like, okay, you act like this in real life. You're a kind person, you're empathetic, you're loving towards people, like regardless of even their first reactions to you. You just show love, right? I told him, I'm like, when you get online and start like you start playing multiplayer like Call of Duty or something like something as like innocuous as that, right? But you know, it's like it sets the standard, like you said, it's a foundational thing. It's like
Yeah.
just treat other people with respect. Like if you wouldn't say that shit to them in real life, right? Then why, because of the anonymity of the screen, you know
Mhm.
what I mean, would you like be ballsy enough to say that shit to somebody else? Just treat people with the respect that you would want to be treated with, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah.
No, I think, we try to avoid in life nowadays consequences, and consequences are the life's best teachers. You
Yep.
can't avoid that. So that needs to be re-engaged and stuff like that. So along those lines, you and I started talking about this back and forth on social and just chatting it up. And then I go, dude, we're having such a fun conversation. We need to put this on a podcast. And one of the things that we were talking about was, we were talking about, as the world, along with the world, everyone's talking about Andrew Tate, right?
Yeah.
What do you know of him? What do you know of him, about him, your feelings, your thoughts overall? And we can chat about him for hours, but I do want to bring
Sure.
him up because it is a hot topic right now. So what's your view?
It, so this is how disconnected I am from pop culture. Like I didn't
Okay.
know I knew memes and I've seen videos of the guy and like the stuff that he would talk about,
Mm-hmm.
but um I don't follow that stuff, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not on social media. Like the most controversial person I listen to would be like Joe Rogan or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's not even on an everyday basis. I really just listen to the comedy guys comedians he comes on. But
Right.
after you brought it up, it was it did fall in line with a lot of things that I had been seeing in social media. Like first, like kind of like where we started was Joe Rogan's interview with Zuckerberg, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
then you had mentioned Tate, and then at that, I'll be very honest, like I didn't know about his brother or him
Mm-hmm.
until that. I didn't even know that was his name. But I started like looking up, like, okay, what is this guy all about, right? And it got into this weird parallel that I've noticed. So okay, so let me digress. So what I do online is for a job is I'm in research, right?
Okay.
Like I follow like trends and whatnot without getting into too specifics, but it's related to recruiting. But a lot of what I do is patent searches, and I
Mm.
do like a lot of research, recruiting, market analysis, that type of stuff. So the other thing that I like to do on the side is follow online extremist activities.
Mm.
So yeah, so
It explains a lot, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I applied those like things, and I was like, okay, let's just get like a real quick once over like who this guy is. And what I saw was like there's what I had mentioned to you in the chat, right? Like was there seems to be a very strong like parallel between like this incel culture, um, this like liberal people or people that are on the left or whatever, like whatever spectrum you want to call that, right? Political
Mm-hmm.
spectrum you want to call that, right? People on the outside of that like think like, okay, this is just like misogyny at its worst, and then he's got a platform and stuff like that and all this other stuff. And I'm not an apologist for him. Actually, I think he's disgusting, and I think his him and his brother are disgusting. But on certain points, he does raise some interesting like views.
Mm-hmm.
None that, and of what I've seen, none that I subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that like someone like that has to be that polarizing and has to say, like, I don't even know if this guy probably really believes what he's saying
Right.
because he's gotten so much attention. But the fact that he has to be like that far to the opposite end of whatever the extreme that he thinks he's like the polar opposite of, right? In
Mm-hmm.
order to get attention, in order to get views, in order to get the notoriety and the clout that he has, I think that's really weird. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that leaves no room for like a middle ground discussion. Like in a situation where someone, again, like, well, the common thing was like Joe Rogan, right? Like if you really listen to his content, he's asking questions that anybody like that is just interested in any type of subject would ask, right? And he posits questions not as if like they're gospel truth, but people take cliff notes, probably kind of like how I'm taking cliff notes about this Tate, like Andrew Tate
Fair.
and his brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they take cliff notes of stuff. They make these like assumptions based on their beliefs or whatever their moral compass true north is for
Yeah.
them, right? And then they make these like judgment calls of like, okay, he's a misogynist. Well, after seeing what I've seen, I agree with them,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a lot of stuff, but also at the same time, if there are valid points that he was trying to make, they're clouded over by the fact that he said these outrageous things. So I
Yeah.
guess, I don't know how that necessarily answers your question, but like I'm not also I just want to put out there for your listeners and stuff, like I'm not taking like a middle stance or a non stance on something. I really don't know the guy. Like
Right.
I'm of an age group, like you said at the top, right, where social media is not like my form of entertainment. I use
Yeah.
the internet for literally my job and to search out things like obscure things that are of interest to me, but
Mm-hmm.
that don't necessarily inform my decisions on how I raise my son, how I interact with my wife, my community, my family.
Yep.
I'm not in that age group. You know what I mean? So I really didn't know like who Andrew was, and I
Yeah.
guess he has a brother named Tristan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I mean, but yeah, it's like to me though, just like again, the broad strokes of stuff that I saw,
Yeah.
from a research mindset, I mean, it really aligns itself with some of these weird kind of like incel male rights things,
Yeah.
which I think there probably are some like legitimate statements to the counter of the most extreme statements from the other side of that spectrum or that thought bubble or that thought
Mm-hmm.
process.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't have a discussion anymore because this guy said what he said, you know, about like sexual assaults or
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's things where it's like, well, okay, for me, that like as a more my own personal moral, it's like
Right.
there's not until I mean, okay, so like you want to really get into weird specifics, like you want to talk about what was it, the Princeton? Was it Princeton? That whole thing that happened before social, like before there was like the rugby team thing,
Okay.
right? Where it wasn't Princeton. Damn, I can't remember what college it was, right? And the whole nation was like, dude, these rugby players or lacrosse players or whoever, whatever the hell they were, like what like hung these kids out to dry based on accusations of
Mm-hmm.
a female, right? And I guess what the lesson learned out of that, at least for me, is like we have to take accusations absolutely serious. But
Mm-hmm.
when there are incongruencies in like, or like there's, problems with continuity and story or like, stuff like that, we also have to suss that out too, because we do live in a society in the United States where people are innocent until proven guilty. But I think going back to the social media thing, it gets compounded because before you're actually in a court of opinion, like, or before you're actually in a court setting, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the court of public opinion.
Yep.
You're fucked whether or not you really did those things or meant those things or said those things or meant it in that context
Mm-hmm.
before you even have a chance to plead your case. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I don't know if that
No,
makes sense.
no, it totally makes sense, and it actually helps me kind of segue into what my thing is. Like I said, it's first of all, I'm not. It's not like I'm an Andrew Tate fanboy or anything like that. But I will say I've done a deeper dive only by accident, and here's how I discovered him. So going back to Joe Rogan, right? I'm a huge consistent listener of Joe Rogan's podcast, and you said you listen to a lot of the comedy or his friends comedians when they come on. One of the comedians is Tom Segura and Christina P. The married couple. They have a
Yeah.
podcast called Your Mom's House, right? Funny
Yep.
podcast, probably one of the dirtiest, probably grossest fart dick joke podcasts you can listen to. So if
Yeah.
that what makes you laugh, then I highly recommend it. If it's not, move on, right? That
Yeah.
that for me personally makes me laugh because I'm a 5-year
Yeah.
old, right?
No,
So
my wife and I, just side note, we like all YMH studio stuff. My wife and I
oh
are big
dude,
fans of. So yeah, we
awesome.
went to
So
go see Tom Segura like live and
he's
stuff like that.
phenomenal,
So yeah,
phenomenal. So they have every now and then they have a segment called the cool guy, right? So basically what it is
yeah.
their team scours the internet for weirdos, like very
Hmm.
eccentric, satirical weirdos. Some of them are true, some of them are satirical, and they post the videos and they laugh about it, they make fun of it. They,
Yeah.
as far as for me, discovered Andrew Tate years ago because there's a ridiculous video where he was talking about water, how only poor people drink tap water. And if you're rich, even if you don't like sparkling water, you have to drink sparkling water because it separates you from being poor, right? So it starts
The
off,
class system.
yeah,
I
the class,
saw that video, dude.
yeah.
No,
And
I saw that TikTok, dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that one right there, right? So they were making fun of, that's how I discovered Andrew Tate. And then it became a whole wide thing where it's like, hey, he's part of the cool club, you know, these weirdos. But it was funny because no one took him seriously. It was satirical, right? And then somewhere along the way, uh, he started to develop an audience, and then he basically got in their show, and I listened to his thing. And as a grown up, I am able to compartmentalize. I can never say that word.
Compartmentalize. Yeah.
Compartmentalize
Yeah.
things, items, and thoughts, right? I can
Sure.
listen to somebody and go, that in my world is ridiculous. Oh shit, that makes sense. It's not an all or one, right? You being
Yeah.
a libertarian, you understand that. It's not
Sure.
red till dead, blue no matter who. It's fuck,
Yeah.
what makes sense in life, right? So
Exactly.
as he's joking around during this interview and he's talking about ridiculous stuff about women, and they're laughing because, you know, Christina P's laughing. She's playing into it. She's like, hey, I'm too dumb for this. Explain it further. She's playing along. But then every now and then he drops stuff like, hey, if you're a guy and you want, you know, to be successful in life, because the first thing a boy or a teenage boy wants is just hormonal, is girls to like them. It's important. It's
Yeah.
hardwired in us. Well, you can't force someone to like you, because what are you bringing to the table? So my encouragement to young men and young boys is to be a man of high value. What does that
Yep.
mean? That means get yourself in good shape, learn a task, learn a skill, be interesting, and then unfortunately or fortunately, go out there and learn how to make money, become financially successful, bring yourself to a higher level so that you can
Yeah.
attract the type of women that you want to attract. I listen to that. I go, if I had a son, I would tell him the exact same thing, you know? So
Yeah.
then this, the last like 18 months, whatever it is, he starts spiraling like all over the place. And then obviously, you know, I start listening to him in long format, and I recognize on social media the snippets that they tend to put out are the
Mhm.
snippets out of context, as they do with everybody, right?
Yep.
I think one of his most controversial thing was they snippet where he said women should take responsibility for being raped. If I listen to that, I would say, go fuck yourself. How dare you? Right? As
Yeah.
any normal person would. I found the full interview. What he was basically saying is, he was basically saying everybody needs to take responsibility for surroundings and choices and consequences, right?
Yep.
If I walk around a certain neighborhood with $1 million bag, and it's a
Yeah.
bad neighborhood in a dark alley, and I get mugged, can I
That's on you.
100%, yeah, can I 100%
Yeah.
blame the thief or the robber or
Yeah.
the mugger? No, because I
Yeah.
have to take responsibility for putting myself there. Some women that put themselves in dangerous sexual situations, at some point you also have to go, should I have gotten to a car with 5 dudes in a miniskirt when I'm half drunk? No one has a right to impose their physicality on anybody,
No,
right? Let's make that,
that's not that, but
that's not
that morality question is, that's not what is in question. We're
correct.
okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
We're discussing the new in
the
that he's
nuances,
discussing the nuances of
right?
stuff, and I think that's again going back to like the pollution of social media and
Sure.
why, as a parent, like I'm very wary of like
Mm-hmm.
how that introduction of my son into that like social like that social construct, how
Right.
that's going to work,
Right.
because you're right. Like again, I'm at fault because if I saw that clip and saw very similar clips of that, but again, those are clips. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same reason why like Joe Rogan got hung out to dry,
Oh yeah.
and I'll even put this out here on this is like when I started talking about antivirals or reposting stuff on antivirals back in like about a year and a half ago, there were people in my own family that were like, "Oh, you're some type of like QAnon conspiracy
Mm-hmm.
theorist," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Fuck no, dude!
Yeah.
Like, no." Like I'm just stating the facts that if there is something that even as dumb as I am, like I found out about an antiviral that has been administered billions of times and
Mm-hmm.
is one of the safest things. And on top of that, poor countries
Mm-hmm.
that weren't able to buy the vaccines from Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson, and Moderna or whatever, right? Like that's what they were using. Like my buddy for that I went to high school with, like he works for a big search engine company, right? And he
Mhm.
got stuck in Vietnam and he was just like, dude, they didn't have money to buy like, you know, like the vaccines and stuff when they first came out. So what they were giving out was antivirals. He's all, I took the ivermectin.
Mhm.
And he was like, it's not horse. I mean, it can be used for horse deworming for the viral, like whatever the hell. But it's like,
Yeah.
how did that come? So going back to what you're saying about Tate, is like nuance and details in a society where we're consuming 1 minute bits, 30-second bits, 15-second bits of
Yeah.
information,
Yeah.
like like reasoning and like context and all that stuff goes out the window. And so like what I'm saying to you is, again, I'm not conceding that Tate has valid points or
Yeah.
whatever, but
Yeah.
I'm also conceding though, like, yeah, I consumed bits and pieces of information on my research on this guy,
Yeah.
and I do need to listen to like the full thing
Yeah.
before like really accurately commenting on like what he meant or my
Yeah.
interpretation of the full conversation.
But you know what? That's not even the point I'm trying to make, too, Brandon. The point I'm trying to make is that regardless, you can listen to anybody you fucking want to. You're a grown ass adult. I think the bigger
Yeah,
picture is we are grown ass adults. It's why is all of a sudden this guy, boom, wiped out from all footprints of social media? Like,
yeah,
it's like the social media warlords and the gods decide you're not it for us, and they have that power. And what I
yeah,
always caution people, and I use sports an analogy, is that I am center right. My politics are center right, right?
yeah,
But I will, and I think a lot of people on the way left are wacky, as I do with the far right, they're wacky. I will
yeah,
defend and support the wackiest, the leftiest of lefts, the purplest hair, woke person's ability to have a platform, as I do anybody. Because
yes,
what happens in a society where you lose freedom of speech and someone mandates it on your behalf for safety reasons
yeah,
is that slippery slope happens real quick. And my
mhm,
analogy is like it's sports. It's you watch a basketball game and the ref is either your best friend or your worst enemy. He can make that same call, and that call, if it benefits you, you're cheering. If it isn't,
mhm,
he's the worst ref in the history of the world. And
yep,
if it happens to somebody and they're able to do that without recourse, someday that's going to be you and your train of thought. You know what I
yep.
mean? And it's a
No,
scary thing, man. It's what people need to realize. It's not about winning. It's like people that hate him think, "Oh, we won, we won." You won nothing. All you've done
yep,
is you've lost the ability to have precedent over your voice in the future. You know,
yep.
that's
No,
for me is the bigger
I
picture.
no, I do appreciate your segue into that. I do have like thoughts about that. No, you're
Mm-hmm.
right. Despite how controversial any of that stuff was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I agree with you 100%. Like he should have a platform to say what he wants to say because we're free speech. Like
Yeah,
what the hell? Like we literally like liberals, let's say, okay, right? Like that's the topic of conversation in a national kind of thing. It's like liberals or conservatives. Okay, well,
sure.
let's start with liberals. Liberals literally got shot at colleges during the
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam War for like voicing their shit. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like they should. I don't think that Kent College stuff should have happened, right? Like they should have been protected. That the government at that time should have respected those citizens'
Hundred
like
percent.
right to free speech.
100%.
Same way that like what you're saying is like, okay, maybe this guy's nationality, whatever, fine, okay, but let's talk about like domestic United States figures, right? People who have been booted off. Let's say somebody as controversial as Donald Trump. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's an orange racist asshole that has tricked a bunch of poor conservatives into thinking he has their best interests in mind. And I think that's entire bullshit. But for him to be deplatformed in the United States for saying, no matter how controversial, to your point,
Yeah.
like no matter how controversial or quote unquote problematic his statements were, he should be able to say those things,
Right.
and it should be able to spark discussion. Those phrases when you hear from like, I won't guess their agenda or the political affiliation, but that thing where you say like, oh, when they say these things or make these statements, right? Those are dangerous. And I'm like, I don't really know about that. That should have like either you're just really offended, like easily offended, or you should also use that same platform to start a discussion in your own community
Right.
about like
Right.
what should happen, or use the same platform to like comment and like start a like a discussion about those things, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like we're all Americans, we all want the same things, right? Whether you have like you're a corn farmer out in the middle of butt fuck nowhere, or
Right.
you're like a purple haired like liberal that lives in Seattle and thinks everybody should do heroin in the open. Like,
Mhm.
you all everybody wants the same thing. We want security, we want safety, right? We want a ability to make a living and to
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, like we
Yeah.
all want the same thing. So let's just have a discussion.
Yeah, MLK supported the KKK's rights. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like how do you have discourse and how do you have things to become better? It's when you shut people down. My viewpoint on that is your viewpoints and beliefs are too weak, or you're too weak to be challenged, or you're
yep,
too scared to have a debate. And I'll say it publicly here. I mean, you're talking about a broken two political system that should be reevaluated and change. But in 2020, I voted for Trump because you gave me two options, right?
yep.
And people came to me via social text message and stuff and said, I can't understand why you vote for Trump. Well, give me a call. Let's chat. Probably
Yeah.
about 13, 14 people said that to me, friends and family. I said, cool, let's have a chat. And I'll explain why in depth. I don't have a fucking MAGA banner in front of my house. I don't have that. But within my life, with these circumstances, with this current situation, with the two lackluster choices that you've given me, again, I have this option that I'm pursuing. Zero people followed up and want to have a conversation. And that's the
Yeah.
challenge, is that people pick their teams, regardless of politics, regardless of whatever else that's in society, and nobody wants to talk. Everybody wants to be emotional. And I think they are addicted to being angry and outraged. I've never been
Yeah.
really outraged over politics. You know what I mean? It is what it is, dude. I'll figure it out and I'll protect my family and I'll succeed regardless. But I think people just have become addicted to being outraged, and they don't really want to find common ground. And that to me is also scary. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, definitely. The outrage culture thing, right? Like it's very like it almost seems trendy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the moment of like one of the most like again, I like comedy, right? So
Yeah.
like the whole thing with Netflix and Dave Chappelle,
Yeah.
like if people were really that upset, I mean, employees of Netflix were literally walking into board like senior management executive like meetings and on campus to like be activists, employee activists or
Right.
whatever. And that's fine. That's their right to do that if
Mm-hmm.
they so like they choose, right? Like they feel strong enough about that. And I actually applaud that because like, hey, it takes some balls to like
Sure.
put your job on the line to like piss off a bunch of executives that sign a paycheck. But not here, that's neither here nor there. What you're saying is like I agree with you, is like there seems to be like a very quick like attention span going back like related to the social media thing that we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
It's like that combined with outrage, and it's like you make this big ass noise about it, and then what happened? Like if you really were feeling that Dave Chappelle was impeding or inciting hate
Mm-hmm.
against trans people and people in that community, right? Um, where was the follow up?
Mm-hmm.
And then also when he said like, hey, look, I will go to meet with you
Mm-hmm.
all,
I
like
was gonna say that.
whoever you can say is, yeah, like whoever you can say like represents like thought leaders, whoever from that community, I will go and like I'll talk, you know what I mean, I'll talk with you and like we can hash this out, you know what I mean. But there was no follow-up. It's
Do
like,
you know what his only stipulation was?
what was the stipulation?
You must watch the special, because you
Oh
cannot
yeah, that's
have a
right.
conversation with me about how evil, how bad my special is without watching the special. And that's the thing. Anybody in their right mind that watched the special, and what Brandon and I are talking and referencing to, and this is kind of old news, but we'll bring it up again, is
Yeah.
he has some comments about the trans community. But if you watch the special in that specific segment, that long story that he was telling, he was talking about a dear friend of his. And I found nothing wrong with that story. He was telling
Nope.
it loving way, how much he supported her. He brought her on a road as an opener. They had banter, all this stuff. And and the irony is, not to give it away, but the irony is her collapse was actually due to the fact that she was friends with him because the community went against
Turned
her.
against her. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
that. It's like the fat community going against Rebel Wilson. Was that her name? The actress
Yeah.
Rebel Wilson,
Rebel
and
Wilson. Yeah.
and Adele for becoming skinny. Again, it's like you pick your tribe and you're not allowed to think or act in a different way. It's
Yeah.
crazy to me, man. It's crazy. But yeah, to your point, it is that. It's like Chappelle offered to have a conversation and no one is serious about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that leads me to that question again. It's like it's always the 5% loudest that gets the most thing, right? It's like the squeaky
Yeah.
wheel. And how much of that is for them and how much of that's for notoriety and how much of that is just to check the box, because you're right, there is no follow-up, there's no follow-through. You know, it's on to the
Yeah.
next thing, right?
Yeah.
So
It's like virtual signaling, right? Like,
yeah.
you know, I'm gonna uh this is a big throwback, but like when Facebook was like the thing, right?
Mm,
And then you had the attacks in France, and then everybody had that little
mm,
like France background, right? And then it
yeah.
was the next thing, and it was the next thing, and it's like people
Yeah.
feel good for the fact that like they can show their network, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I support like Ukraine,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a very nuanced thing, and like there's some very strong opinions. I'm sure people very informed and probably more informed people than I have, but it's
Sure.
like again, it's like that's the wave, right? Like that's
Mhm.
you have to show that you're virtuous to other people who probably you don't even know just by having the filter or having the thing like I support Ukraine, I stand with Ukraine, and all this other stuff. So yeah.
Two things I want to piggyback on that. It's funny that you brought the whole Paris thing. Um, Obviously you're right, on social media everyone was doing the Eiffel Tower and the
Mm-hmm.
French flag and all that stuff, which is fine. You know, it's their rights, it's social media, as they should. I came across one, I think it was because a comedian reposted it and he said, this is what's wrong with society. And it was this rip dude, six pack, like freaking Model S Abercrombie and Fitch physique guy. He was
Yeah.
shirtless and he painted the Eiffel Tower on his chest to be in solidarity with the crisis and with the tragedy. And that's the level of narcissism that
Yep.
social media society has allowed, because it gives people that soapbox to grandstand, man. And it's you're right.
Yeah.
You dude, I wish I said it first. You hit it on the head, man. There's never or rarely a follow through. It's just a check. Okay, we're upset with this. Next one,
Yeah.
check. We're also upset with this because we're better than you, et cetera, et cetera. It's wild. Um, so how do you foresee, going back to Shane? How do you foresee you and Tyra maneuvering this? Because social media is only going to get bigger, and it's going to be even more
Yeah.
encompassing and more part of his life.
So some of the discussions that my wife and I have had like are, and and I'll be very honest, like we haven't really like had a big talk or continuous talks about it, but we have kind of put out a couple of thoughts around it. And I think, at least from my stance, I'm not going to speak for my wife. So like I will say from my stance, I'm
Mm,
very interested to see what platforms I will like introduce him to first, so that way it will teach him how to be a like responsible citizen online, how to
yeah,
conduct himself and communicate with others safely, and
yeah.
then also how to like financial literacy in a digital age.
Mm,
Going back to Roblox, like there's been some rumors that I've been seeing that like the Roblox bucks, right? Like the gift cards that all the uncles and aunties and moms and dads and whatever buy their kids and niece, nephews, sons, daughters. Like they're thinking about turning that into a crypto. Don't quote me on that. That
yeah,
this is
yeah.
just my information that I've gathered to your listeners. Like this information that I've gathered, and that's kind of what I think the trend is, right? So
Mhm.
so like in this scenario, okay, let's just call it a hypothetical, right? In that scenario, if the NFT thing that I talked about in the very beginning, right, with Gucci and all that stuff, right, and then also the fact that Roblox has been a very like early, like younger audience, like kind of like safe platform for collaboration, but we'll say just gaming because that's all we think it is. Like, I think what's going to happen is they're going to start teaching economy, because if they're not going to teach everybody, not
Mm.
everybody's going to be interested in making an app,
Right.
right? I've been privy to information that leads me to believe that there's an effort to try to make a standardized currency. So it'd probably be a stable coin at best. Like, it's not going to be like, it's going to be something that matches to the dollar. So that way it could teach children like how to use crypto, or like, like digital funds to do things, and then pay
Interesting.
for those NFTs that I talked about earlier. Because not every child is interested in building an app and building a
Right.
community. But I think what they're marching towards, and then this is information that's out there. Like they recently had like their developers conference type thing. Some of the stuff that I had listened to was kind of like leading me to believe that, one, they're going for an older generation and trying to figure out how they can scale up that audience to like compete with like what Meta's doing as far as collaboration and social, interaction type stuff, right? But I think the interesting thing for me as a parent is the shift that they're trying to do, which is Roblox was just a Minecraft kind of stand-in, right? And then they added like the software development kits so their kids can figure out how to make a game based on templates or whatever. They're expanding that stuff. They're
Interesting.
actually adding in like, from my interpretation of the data, it looks like they're expanding that knowledge share of like how to use SDKs and how to like software development kits.
Hmm.
And then also like, teaching kids how to code within certain frameworks or whatever, and then
Like
add
learn how to write
monetization
basic scripts and stuff like that.
scripts and stuff like
That's
that. and
cool, man.
then and then the other part that I thought was really interesting was the like helping children, or helping the junior develop, I don't know how you really want to call it, but anyways, like helping people understand like the economy behind that, right? So it's fine, you made an app, like how are you going to make money on this,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so, and then that whole thing about the NFT part, right? I think what they're doing with that, in my estimation again, I think what they're doing with all those partnerships with Gucci and all those name brands is not just they're trying to attract a larger older audience, but I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out, okay, so my character got these like NFT, like, hats, jackets, whatever the
Hmm.
hell, right? Do they carry over to the next person's app? Does my avatar go over there? And so if you think about that as an implication of like, okay, so if you can take your clothing and your unique character to a different world, if you will, right, on their platform, then you start meeting people and go have a marketplace where you can be like, hey, like I got this as a reward from someone else's game. Did you want to buy it from me?
Mm.
So I don't know. That's what I think they're going towards.
That's
I don't know how
interesting.
that.
So in one meta world, you've added value to um your character, and you can basically bring it over to another world, basically even sell it off and what have you. Right.
I think that's what
That's
they're trying to
interesting.
do. But again, like that's just my observation. But again, but pulling back, like I went down a rabbit hole on that.
It's all
But
good.
pulling back from that, as far as like, how we're going to introduce like being I don't know what they call it in China, netizen or whatever, like
Mm.
a citizen of the net, right? Like social media to my son, like there's going to be some very strict parameters. But I think one thing that I want him to realize is that it's not real. Like,
Right.
people can say whatever the hell they want. And I've actually started positing that idea to him that like people can say hurtful things, but it's up to you of whether or not you're going to invest your emotional horsepower and your emotional bandwidth into validating what that person said, right? Like, and that has implications to how he'll conduct himself online, like the cyberbullying thing,
Mm.
right? Like there were children who were like saying things that like kind of hurt his feelings. And I didn't play that down. I said, no, it's okay for you to feel like
It's
that after
valid.
someone says
Hmm.
something like that, right? But I said, but do you really think that you're that thing that they said? And he goes, no. And I'm like, look at your accomplishments, right? In sports, right? Like, and go into what you were saying earlier, like young males should have like a foundation of these things with there's pursuits, there's
Hmm.
interests, right? That build their character, whether it's physical, mental, or all the above. But like I told him, I was like, so the other things that you are pursuing, like, does that give like validation to what that child said to you? And I didn't say it in these words. I said it much more simpler. But he
Sure,
goes,
sure. I
no.
get it.
And he's like, oh. I was like, yeah. So, but when they say those things, like, what's your reaction to me? He's like, I get angry. I want to punch him, or I want to push him or something. I'm like, but is that the right reaction?
Right.
Because is that person important to you? Like, when you really sit down and think about it, you take your emotions out of the situation, right? Like, does it really mean anything? Like, are they your friend?
Yeah.
It'd be different if a friend said that, right? And then, so he processing things like that. And I think, at least for me, like I said, like, I'm not going to speak for my wife, but I think for me, that's going to be one of the big things, right? Like, the statistics show that like children are very early being influenced by not just what they're consuming, like visually from like all these different algorithms or whatever, but they're also taking, like you said, like what we were talking about in the very beginning of our conversation, like people saying things without consequences, with like knowing that the screen and internet and the platform are levels of anonymity, so they can say whatever they want to say, even though they may not say it in person. And I think one of the things too that I want to make sure that Shane understands is like, that's not real.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also at the same time, your reaction to that, if you
Hmm.
decide to react to that, is going to be there forever.
Yeah. I live by this mantra, and Shane is way ahead of me because he has a great dad like you, but I'm 46. I probably have lived by this mantra maybe over the last 6 years of my life. So I'm a slow learner, right? My mantra is my emotion is my personal power. When I give and I lose my emotions, lose control of my emotions, I give my personal power away to someone else. I lose my sovereignty. So it is the utmost importance for me personally in my life that I dictate, I control the spectrum of my emotion. And I think, in simpler terms, you're helping him understand that, and that's great. I love what you said, man. You should coin that. It's like, be a good citizen of social media. I think people forget that. It's like, hey, if this is going to be a community, this is going to be our world, our reality to some degree. We're not just participants in social media, man. We're citizens of social media. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you're not going to act a certain way in the physical form, why are you doing that in the social, form, the virtual form?
And
Uh, I was gonna say,
I think
I
I
might
think what
I might coin that and try to make a T-shirt, make some
no,
money.
dude, no, do it,
Yeah,
dude. I'm just
do
glad to
do a
be part of the
trademark, do a trademark
conversation, man.
research for me on that. If no one's used it, I'm gonna trademark it.
But what I was gonna say too, man, is like where that line's gonna get blurred, though.
Mhm.
Like going back to like people using the screen as anonymity. We're talking about text, right? The
Mm.
psychology of someone reading something and it affecting them that bad. How bad is it gonna be if if Meta achieves what Mark wants to achieve? I would very much I would really encourage anybody who's listening to this, like, to really listen to Joe Rogan's interview with Mark Zuckerberg. Mark is explaining in
Yeah,
detail what his emphasis are, and the biomechanics, the brain mechanics, right? Like the neurological mechanics of what he's trying to design. The fact that like it's just me and Rick right now on a Zoom, right? But I don't know if Rick is looking at me from the same side of the screen that I'm looking at him, right?
hmm,
There, Mark talks about those things. So what I'm alluding to is, how does cyberbullying like, how does that become more problematic? Because to us, we're like, dude, how the hell did you like get that like depressed off of text? But it's a
yeah.
real thing because the statistics
Oh yeah,
show. So
yeah,
okay, so fine, it's something that we have to deal with. We haven't even figured out how to deal with that mental like stuff that children are going through cyberbullying, through text
yeah,
and memes.
yeah,
Then we're trying to add on like virtual reality, augmented reality. What the hell is that going to be like?
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like it's a weird new frontier. I think it's a it's a progression of tech and collaboration that is like undeniably going to happen whether we like it or not.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
it raises some pretty interesting questions about like how, again, like raising my son to be a good steward and a good steward of that platform for whatever he wants to get
Yeah.
out of it. But also, again, how do you start separating when things start looking like they're really in front of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, I agree that you hit it on the head, and I concur with that. If you guys haven't, it's about 3 hours. Most of his interviews is 3 hours, but listen to Rogan's episode where he talks to Mark Zuckerberg, and to Mark's credit, he did the best he could to be human. You know what I mean? He actually
Yeah.
came up a lot more human than I thought. But he makes no qualms. His goal and his mission is to have virtually no separation between virtual augmented reality and your physical reality.
Yep.
Everything is going to be better, faster, touch and feel. Wait until you get smell into these worlds. So it's kind of like you're right. As a parent, you go, God, how do I separate what's real and what's not when things are going to be basically almost impossible to differentiate? So
Yeah.
I guess we find out as we learn. But you're right, you can't stop it. I think it's one of those things where it's the result of technology going so fast, and we forget that we're basically monkeys with a language. You know, our brains have not evolved fast enough to keep up with technology, and we need to take cues from countries that don't have our best interests at heart. I mean, say what you say, at the end of the day, TikTok is still a Chinese app, and it's
Yep.
ironic that it's a Chinese app where in China they cap their user amount. They cap how long you can be on TikTok,
Yep.
and their algorithms actually push science, math, education, TikToks
Hmm.
above everything else. Our
Yeah.
dumbasses in America, we do dances, you know, and funny
Yep.
stuff for 6, 8 hours a day, and you lose yourself in it, you know. And China has a cap. They know something we don't, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And really, the reality is, it's if not at the very minimum, what it's doing, it's creating society of very short attention span. At
Yeah.
its very worst, it's deprogramming and reprogramming the Western society. Either
It
way, it's
is.
not great, you
Yeah.
know.
No, I agree with you 100% on that too. Like the algorithms that they're promoting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I have a family member who pursued like a degree out in China, right?
Mm-hmm.
An international degree for business. And he was telling me like, yeah, the algorithms are absolutely different.
Mm-hmm.
Like the stuff that gets promoted, like he grew up in the Bay Area, then he goes out there for college, and then he was just like, nah, I don't know any of these stupid ass trends. And then it's like, what's on the platform, right? Because everybody assumes like, oh, it's on this platform, it's
Nah,
accessible, but no,
totally
China's done a
different.
great job on like making sure that those tools are used to promote a
Mm-hmm.
singular national identity.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
that's one thing.
Yep.
The other thing is like to promote that, like whether you say it's coercion or not, like there's a social credit prescribed to each user,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that you conduct yourself online affects your ability to get jobs, to get credit,
100%.
to right stuff like that. And then also, like you said, there's cap. Like if you are a registered user, and because of that social credit thing, right? You have to register as your unique self. You can't
Mm-hmm.
troll. You can't create sock puppet accounts, or it's very hard to at least. And
Yeah.
then if they feel that you're under a certain age and you're logging on too late at night, they'll shut you off the app.
Yeah.
So
And again, guys, this just to be clear, Brandon and I, we're not talking about, conspiracy theory stuff. It's like this is all out in the open. It's just whether we accept or want to dive into the research of it, and not to default to the Rogan podcast again. There was an episode, and you could probably find on YouTube, where he reads out the terms, agreement, and terms and services of every
yeah,
TikTok user. They, you basically sign over your right as a user in almost every aspect, where they can
yeah,
track everything from your swipe motion to the counts to your data entry to everything. You literally are giving over your digital rights to them. And again,
yep,
for 90%, 99% of the population, they don't care about you. But for that
yeah,
1% that is trying to build something interesting, your IP may be stolen or taken like that, right? For the
yep,
scientists out there, for the mathematicians out there, I mean, it is what it is, man. And again, say that word for me. Compartmentalize. I can never say that word. I can
Compartmentalize. Yeah.
say that, break it down.
Come,
I
come,
swear to God, I'm gonna
come,
get it today.
come, calm
Calm, part,
part, mentalize.
compartmentalize. This is what happens when you barely
Compartmentalize.
graduate out of high school. Independence High School, you failed me. Eastside Union District, San Jose, you failed me. I can
Yeah.
recognize what you said earlier about in as horrible as China is. And again, if the internet, if I was popular enough where the internet were going to snippet this, they would snippet the part where I say there's something to be said about being one nation, one
Yeah.
national ideal, right? They don't have left, right, middle. They don't have any of this stuff. It is China and China all the way. It's country first,
Yeah.
people second. And that in itself has a lot of humanitarian issues, obviously.
Big
But
time.
from an empire standpoint, from a world domination standpoint, from a competition standpoint, how does one compete when in Western society we can't agree on gender? You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
that's a big thing. But I think that's by design,
No, I agree.
right? And I think that's by design, like because if we talk about like again, like the platform for like just TikTok, right? So going on to like before I do like, the like how do we get to that point, right? Like one of the things about what Rick was saying as far as like the user agreements and all that other stuff, the other thing is that for people to understand is that all your social media platform apps and most of your search apps on your phone, they share metadata unless you shut that off. And
Correct.
what that means is that like TikTok is going to know what you're saying through WeChat or WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, what you're looking at on like your Instagram. So it's very invasive, but that's a side note. But how like yeah, so how do we I I don't really have a direct answer for that. Like the fact that like again it's like there's no middle ground. There's no like you said, like, whether it's a QAnon person that really believes that illegal immigrants are stealing their jobs,
Mm-hmm.
or that like, a liberal quote unquote person, right, thinks that like I need to be respected for my pronouns and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Those are fine. Those are issues, but I think what the problem is like we don't understand like okay, what are the real impacts of these things?
Yeah.
Yes, like individual freedoms and rights, whether or not they're being impeded upon, those are definitely things that we should be caring
Yeah.
about. But I think where we've lost it, at least from a national perspective, is like we don't we don't push like a one nation
No, we don't.
ideal.
We don't. I mean,
Like we don't
there was
we don't
there
yeah.
was an orange guy that tried to push America first, and that got called a fascist. You know,
Yep.
and I think his mouthpiece really just disrupted. He was so polarizing. Where I mean, I have friends, liberal friends that I always go to the scenario of okay, you're a father. As much as you hate Donald Trump, let's use this hypothetical out of the pocket scenario. Your son had a heart disease and he was the only surgeon that can operate on your son. Would you let your son die? I had I have a friend who I still love and he's still my friend who said yes, I will let my son die. How do you come back from that? It's not a Donald Trump thing. It's a I'm all in mentality thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you come back from that. And I've resolved to the point, not to,
Yeah.
and we'll change the topic as we wrap up because I don't want this to be a Debbie Downer podcast.
No, yeah, yeah.
But the reality is reality, right? I mean, for me, I live in reality. My wife and I, we talk about this all the time. It's like, hey, we just pay attention enough to know how the world is kind of moving. How does it affect us? And what's our game
Yep.
plan? Because we will live our
Exactly.
lives, we will succeed regardless, because that's what
Yeah.
we're determined to, right? The good thing
Yeah.
about not depending on the government to save you is you are committed to not letting the government destroy you either. So you would that's how we function. That's how our philosophy is. But the reality is, I mean, every empire, it's been said to death, every empire crumbles and it crumbles within. And I honestly,
Yeah.
I see it. I love America, first generation immigrant. I love the ideals of America. I still believe in the ingenuity of America. I still believe in what we are supposed to stand for. But I think we have gone too deep into the political corruption that it is probably too late to pull back. And I'll finish with this. The challenge is, I don't know why this stuck with me. Years ago, I saw a 2020 episode where they were talking and following the grand opening of the very first Walmart in China, and
Mm,
everyone was, yeah, this and that. And economists saying this is going to be better for the world. We're to turn China into a pure capitalist country, this and that. And then there was this one guy, I wish I knew his name. They called him a Debbie Downer conspiracy theorist. And they said this will
mm,
be the start of the destruction of America or the Western world. Because the Western world, specifically in America, we have such a short term mindset. We barely can
mm.
think in 4 years, election wise. We barely can
Yeah.
think in 4 years. China plans a century at a time. Whatever their plans are, don't take fruition to nearly a century. And they're
Yeah.
patient and they're committed and they are all in terms of nation first, people second. And I
Yeah.
think, we're knocking on, since that interview, we're probably knocking on 60 years or 40 years. Oh, no, I'm not that old, but 40 years. So we're knocking on that century mark. So you're starting to see
Yeah.
things take place, right? But anyway, we'll change the subject, dude. I love talking to you, man. We should do this more often. But let
Yeah.
me kind of wrap up with something more fun. When are you gonna come and visit me? When are you gonna take the family to come visit me in Vegas? It's starting to finally cool
Dude,
off.
dude, like I'm down, but like it's not going to be anything on the strip, dude. Like
Oh
I
no.
remember all those trips, dude, where we were out there, like
Yeah.
young and not
Yeah.
living
Bachelor parties and
correctly,
stuff,
right?
sure.
Yeah, like dude, I hated that shit, dude. I hated pool parties, dude. I the one that we had for the Versailles, like dude, I literally had a heat stroke. I had seized up, dude,
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
pool party. Like
You're
I was
still
like,
probably
dude, I
hungover.
never. Yeah, that probably that too.
No,
But no,
bro.
yeah, like
No, no, no. I live in
shows,
suburbia.
shows, and yeah, no. Um, I want to take Shane to go see the Hoover, right?
Mhm.
And Lake Mead and stuff like that. I'm real interested in. Oh, shout out to another YouTube channel is Sin City Outdoors.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I love watching those dudes, man. I love watching those guys. But yeah, no, like I'd love to go like check out Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam
Yeah.
and do other things that are not based on like being in the strip and like drinking alcohol all day. So
Twana Marie, right?
yeah, yeah.
They were out here May-ish, and Marie was like, "Oh my God, I had no idea this is Vegas." I'm like, "Yeah, this is residential Vegas. This is not
Yeah.
the strip." She's like, I'm ready to move here. She came, her and Tuan and all their kids came for like 4 days. We took them to the lake. We took them out, brunching, shopping, my neighborhood. There was a birthday party. They brought out like a jumping thing, and their kids went and played with the kids in the neighborhood. And they're like, "This is what Vegas life is." Yeah, 100%. So when you guys come out, we'll show you
How
that.
yeah, how are the schools out there? Like I haven't looked. Like
The
it's never been
schools
on
are
the
not that
target.
great, but I hope they're getting better with the influx of people moving.
Yeah.
I think we do have charter options.
Okay.
And in addition to that, I always tell people the state income tax that you save, use that and send your kid to private school or homeschool. And that's just
Yeah,
pure
no,
honesty.
seriously.
To be honest with
I
you,
mean,
control
yeah.
more of I have a really good friend of mine. She's an entrepreneur, really successful, really busy, but she is homeschooling her kids, and her homeschooling is
Mhm.
she does the minimum that is required from the board. The rest of her education is she brings them to the office for work. She'll bring them on road trips. She'll bring them in, and they're like 7 and 10 years old. She'll bring them in
Dude, that's
on
awesome.
boardroom meetings, house showings, stuff like that. They have a restaurant that they
Yeah.
invested in Washington. They took a trip to Washington D.C., did a whole week
Okay.
tour, and did a history lesson that way. That's education, my friend. That's education.
No, it is. You
So,
know, to piggyback on that, that's something that so my wife and I have been looking at a state, right? And
mhm.
Shane's been kind of like, the response that any child would have, right?
Of
Like I'm gonna
course,
be away from my cousins, I'm gonna be away from my friends and stuff like that. So he's like, why would you guys be looking at that, right?
mhm.
And I told him, I was like, the school that you're at right now, mommy and daddy pay a pretty good amount of money. And it's not that we wouldn't like that it's a problem, but it's
Right.
like it's money that could be spent elsewhere, right?
Yep.
And that could and also I said the limitations of that of your school only goes up to a certain grade. And I told him I was like, if we stay here, like you're gonna get an education that's only gonna teach you how to do the same things you're learning now, right now, which is,
Mm.
you know, he's in second grade, he's doing third grade math, he's doing great at history. He wants to learn more about World War II. Like, you know, like, so he
Uh-huh.
has interest. But I told him, I was like, it'd be very hard for mommy and daddy to find a school that would help prepare you to be an adult, right?
Yeah.
Like to pursue things that are of interest to you that you can be successful at, whether that's sports or whatever. Like I told, like I'm very like realistic with them about that stuff, but also very realistic, but also still like a parent where it's like you're still 7 years old, you can do whatever the fuck you want, like just
Yeah.
work hard towards it, right?
Yeah.
But to be able to provide options, and that's what I like. That's one thing I do tell them, like that we tell them is that this is not about like mommy and daddy and money. It's like money doesn't give happiness; it gives options,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and I said I want to give you more options. You know what I
No,
mean?
that's beautiful.
You're my only little boy. Like I want to give you as many options as I can. So
My friend, I expect to see you and the family come out, take a long weekend,
for
come
sure,
out.
man.
You know what I mean? You got a place to stay here. We'll host you. Love to have these conversations more.
For sure, man.
I want you to leave us with you have the megaphone to the world. I want you to solve the world's problems if you were king for a day. Give me some of Brandon's king of the world decrees if you had all the power, you're omnipotent, you're wise beyond anybody in your perspective. What are a couple of things that we should be doing as a society?
I'm gonna post my Venmo. Everybody send me $1. No, I'm
Love
just
it.
kidding.
Love it.
No. Seriously, like just be good to each other. Like
Mm,
talk to somebody that you have a disagreement with. You're gonna find that there's like more than three things. I guarantee you, there's more than three things like both parties can agree upon. And it doesn't have to be political. It could be fucking food or like something to drink. But like talk to somebody. Like just talk to them. You know
yep.
what I mean? Like even if it's somebody that like okay, so fine, don't meet new people or whatever the fuck. Everybody's weird. But the people that you follow on social media that you went to school with or that
Hmm.
you haven't talked to in many years, reach out to them, ask them how they're doing.
That's beautiful,
That's
dude.
it.
Keep conversation, keep an open mind is what I hear, and keep
Yeah.
dialogue going, dude. I had so much fun. We're gonna do this again, but in
Dude, please,
honesty,
thank you.
dude, thank you for your time and sorry about the whole technical difficult thing because I'm a
Don't worry
dumbass.
about
Um,
it.
but yes, I look forward to having you guys come out. We'll host you. You'll see a different side of Las Vegas. I don't live in Las Vegas. I live in Henderson, the outskirts of Vegas, anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, good times. You know, we'll grill some grill some vegan meat and we'll have a barbecue. He laughs because he knows. My
All
brother,
right,
I'm
man.
signing off. Thank you so much. Tell hello and give your family a big hug for me. All right.
Everyone. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Th-
Same.
Thank you, my friend.